Okay, Randy, how are you?
I'm doing great, David. Thank you.
Good to see you. Randy Opliger from
Kansas City.
Kansas City. It's a long way.
It is.
All right.
Worth it.
What's that?
It's worth it.
Oh, I appreciate that. All right, Randy, what we're going to do is let me kind of go over just kind of our lesson. Okay? First of all, you tended to have the ball positioned back. Why don't you stand right there for a second? You tended to have the ball positioned back and the hands forward, but with the club face closed. And this makes a hooded club face. Okay? So what we did was we said that you're standing too close to the ball and we had too far back, and that tends towards longer, deeper divots. So we're going to play the ball just a little bit more forward, a little bit further away from it, and that's going to take some of the club shaft lean out of there for you. Okay? All right, now, your pre-swing fundamentals we talked about. Instead of pulling your shoulders back and having your arms on the side of your body, which makes you stand kind of close to the ball, we kind of wanted to get your arms out in front of your armpits. That pulls the triceps, stretching just a little bit. That pulls your shoulders forward, and we wanted you to feel like your pecs were squeezing in, not with your arms, but just with the pecs. Okay? All right, and then you said that made you feel like you're a mile from the golf ball. Now the second thing is when you change your distance from the ball, make sure the club stays soled. Okay? Don't be standing up here and changing your distance like this. And make sure the club is soled. Okay? Now if you want to go a little further from it, you can move. Okay? And then you can pick up and do your waggles. Okay? So that was the biggest thing, was your distance from the ball and the plane, what we call the plane of the arms. It's basically the plane of your arms here in relationship to your trunk going on there, so when you bend over it looks more like that.
Okay.
Okay? All right, now we talked about right forearm takeaway. And, you know, right forearm takeaway, a lot of people misinterpret it. It's 3 dimensions. 3 dimensions. And so many people are one-dimensional thinkers, so they think right forearm takeaway or right forearm pickup is the right forearm takeaway. No. Right forearm pickup is not the only dimension of the right forearm takeaway. Okay? Also, the right forearm fanning, which is rotation, internal and external rotation at the shoulder joint. That's another dimension of the right forearm takeaway. So it's not the right forearm takeaway in itself. Rather, there's a blend. We call it War Chant and Walrus. Okay? We said that the right forearm pickup is like War Chant. Okay? And I'm not going to do it on the video. All right? And we said that that's the up and down dimension of the right forearm, War Chant. Okay? We also said if you clap like a walrus or a seal, but we call it walrus. Okay? You see the right forearm, the orbit is around the shoulder, and the hand moves around the elbow a little bit. But you got to make sure on the downswing that that's not your downswing movement. Okay? Now, so it's not just this motion, which creates right arm swinging with the elbow as the center, which we don't want. We want some pickup. So there's a blend between War Chant and Walrus, and that looks like you're dealing cards. See, so War Chant, Walrus, dealing cards. And that makes you look like you're going up and down the plane. And if Bucket's out there, I'm sure he's got some perverted description of that. So anyway, that's for my friend Bucket. He's kind of deranged. He comes from the family of mullet. I still wear
That's another story.
Exactly, another story. So in the takeaway, so here's your new routine. In the takeaway, you're feeling both the Walrus and the War Chant simultaneously. See that? And I noticed that you were checking it here at the side beautifully. If you get too much Walrus, you're too flat. Too much War Chant, you're too upright. Okay? Now when you want to go further back, you don't do one or the other. You don't do more War Chant. You continue both War Chant, Walrus, War Chant, Walrus, War Chant, Walrus, okay, if you want to get longer. So you're continuing up and back on plane if you need to get longer. But I think for you, if you just get to shoulder level, you're going to play good golf. Okay, so that's called the right forearm takeaway. Okay, well, that's 2 dimensions. Well, what's the third dimension? Well, guess what? You don't need to worry about rotation. Okay, because you're going to get your rotation from your pivot. And we already said this motion right here beautifully blends into a pivot with the right shoulder going back to the plane. Okay, so this walrus motion is actually turning the joint, and that invites the torso and the right hip to clear. You see that? Yeah, so it just blends in there beautifully. Okay, now the downstroke, Might as well, since we're on the subject, does my right forearm come straight down? No. Does my right forearm straighten out? Not completely. It doesn't move forward. It does all three. So the right forearm goes down, it moves out, and moves forward. You see that?
Mm-hmm.
So it's basically up and back, down and out. Up and back, down and out. Out is away from you. Down and out. Out, 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 out. Most people don't get enough now. Out. They don't get enough down, they don't get enough out, they always get too much forward. Right forearm forward is the kiss of death. That's the thinnings and the throwaways. Right forearm forward. Now, right forearm down, out, and forward. Down, and emphasize, I think there's more down and there's more out than there is forward. Because you got to remember the pivot also moves you forward. Pivot also moves you back. See, so that, I think that the backswing's only 18 inches long. I mean, there's up, there's back. I mean, there you go. There's the backswing. If I want it flatter, a little more fanning, a little more walrus. There you go. A little more walrus, a little more upright, a little more war chant. See, so it's a blend of war chant, walrus, and pivot. It's a blend. There's certain sequences of the pivot. See what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So there's big arguments out there sometimes on these websites, which are great places for education, but I think a lot of people don't. They think one-dimensionally and they interpret things wrong. The AIs know. The guys that are the authorized instructors, they know what's going on. But you get these guys that they're not AIs and they start talking about it. And I wasn't an AI for very long. I mean, I haven't been an AI for very long. Right forearm takeaway. You've got war chant, you got walrus. You don't need the screwdriver. Okay? All right? And just add some pivot to it, and I think you're fine. And then the downswing looks best it's ever been. Now, we want to talk about the right forearm angle. Come on over here. Okay? Go ahead and do your left arm flying wedge first. So, how do you know if you got your left arm flying wedge correct? This knuckle is the same height as the wrist bone, so that's cocked. Get it where it's level. No, level. Plumb. Level. Turn around sideways for me. That, from this knuckle to here, see, you had it cocked.
Mm-hmm.
That's a cocked wrist.
Mm-hmm.
I want a level wrist. There you go.
Got it.
That's level. So there's your left arm flying wedge. You can see that there. Left arm flying wedge, yes?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, now do your right forearm flying wedge. Okay, we talked about elbows. If your elbow's like this, it destroys some of the wrist bend.
Mm-hmm.
If your forearm's out too far this way, you've got too much right wrist bend. So forearm alignment controls wrist bend. And elbow location controls wrist bend. So right there, see that? And we said, let's go ahead and turn this way now. Back up just a little bit. We said, remember the upper arm, I'm getting you a nuggie. There you go. Hold this up through the waist. Stay there. Now lower your upper right arm. There. Now your right forearm is on plane.
Mm-hmm.
So the elbow, the pressure point, the sweet spot. Now this is not the address position. This is the impact fix. Okay. Now I can address it at impact fix if I want to. Okay. Or I can come back to the standard address, which is right there, and it would not look on plane. Okay. All right. So impact fix is where you got the flying wedge alignments, and lower that upper arm. You feel that? There you go. Beautiful. And you got ample amount of wristband. Now, since we're on the subject, turn around, face this way. All right. How much right wrist bend do I need? Well, it depends on the trajectory I'm going to hit the ball and the direction I'm going to hit the ball. If I have a lot of right wrist bend, that's going to move my right forearm angle of approach further down the track. See that?
Mm-hmm.
So if I've got my right forearm further down the track, I've got a lot more right wrist bend than if I were to hit the ball a little higher. I don't have as much right wrist bend.
Mm-hmm.
You see? And if I go to impact fix, whatever I have here is what I should have up here. If I increase the right wrist bend, guess what? I'm changing my right forearm's angle of approach. And you see that. Some guys go back and they change their right wrist bend too much. And what they're doing is they're not realizing that some players don't set up at impact, they set up at address, where the left wrist is flat and the right wrist is bent. You pull that back in line, now my right wrist is bent and my left wrist is flat.
Mm-hmm.
So they get confused. They're seeing a change in the right wrist bend. Well, it depends on where you set up at address. If I set up at impact fix, I probably should not be changing my right wrist at all.
That was my question earlier. If you set up that way,
You
pretty much leave it that way.
Leave it that way throughout the backswing. If I set up more of it the standard address position, then that right wrist is going to have to change.
Gotcha, gotcha.
But don't do the mistake where you set up impact fix and change the right wrist bend.
No. Set it and
Ooh.
stay there.
Yeah, if you set up an impact
Right.
fix.
Okay.
So did that answer your question?
Yeah, I did. Thank you.
That was worth the plane
That
check.
was worth the ride out here.
Yeah, exactly. Randy, thanks
Thanks,
for
Dave.
coming.
Appreciate it.
All right.